So with that, I'm going to pass us over to Sayantan. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Nick, for at least taking care of the housekeeping. And it's a pleasure to be back on a Queer Disrupt event after a long, long time. I'm Sayantan. I'm a committee member at Queer Disrupt. I am also a journalist by profession. I primarily write at the intersections of science, health, gender, sexuality, and caste. And a large part of my work looks at science-society intersections through queer and trans feminist lenses. Um, the conversation that we're going to have today is about being bi or pan and Indian, and how these identities intersect with each other and inform each other. But before we begin, I'd like to request Snehanjana and Vaneet, our two speakers for the day, two panelists who are going to cross talk with each other, to introduce themselves briefly, after which I'll sort of quickly lay down a couple of ground rules for the event, and then I'd leave it to Vaneet and Snehanjana to take it forward. Vaneet, may I request you to go first, if that's all right?
Of course. So hi, everyone. My name is Vaneet Mehta. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a bisexual Indian man born and raised in Southall in West London. My day job is working as a software engineer, but outside of that, I am a writer and public speaker and work a lot within the LGBTQ+ community. I'm also the founder of the hashtag Bisexual Men Exist. I have delivered talks and appeared on panels, or I've delivered talks for people like Aviva and Pfizer on bisexuality and intersectionality. And I've appeared on panels on places like Bristol University, Imperial College London, and Bi Pride UK. I've also written a book on bisexual men, which is due to be published early next year. So that's me.
Thanks, Vaneet. All the best for your book, and really hope to catch it as soon as it's out. Snehanjana, if we can hear from you, please.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Snehanjana. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm from Calcutta, India, and I'm an incoming PhD student at Texas Tech University. I'll be working mainly with plant-insect interactions and undergraduate biology research. So I'm a bisexual woman. I came out last year, like to my friends, not to my parents, because that will not be possible, like for many years, I think. And yeah, that's it. That's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Snehanjana, for that introduction. Thanks, Vaneet. I think I'm just going to take less than a minute to quickly lay down how the event is going to look, which for the most part is going to be Vaneet and Snehanjana in conversation with each other. And my contribution would be fairly minimal, but I will take the liberty of sort of hopping in or intervening or interrupting, with due apologies to both Vaneet and Snehanjana, if the conversation so requires. For everybody who's here listening, my suggestion and my request is that all of you keep yourselves on mute for the time that Snehanjana and Vaneet are talking. And I think we'll have sufficient amount of time towards the end of the event to have a more open conversation. But if there's something compelling, something that warrants immediate interjection, then please feel free to raise your hand, and I'm going to bring you in when as early as possible. But I think that's fairly it. So I'm very excited to hear to both Vaneet and Snehanjana, because they come from very different geographical and spatial locations, in the sense that Snehanjana is located in India and Vaneet is a part of the diaspora that's located in the UK. So it'll be great to see how this conversation goes. With that, I'm going to leave it to both Snehanjana and Vaneet to take it forward, and I'm listening at the back.
Great. So I guess a good place to start would probably be how was coming out in the South Asian community. So like for me in the UK, I guess it's very different for you in India. So for me, coming out, I mean, my parents still have all of those sort of traditional ideals of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman and how to act and what relationships are. And what I found is that within that, and being in Seattle, which is like a massive community of like the Indian diaspora there, I found that all of that was quite stifling. So I had a lot of expectations put upon me of what it meant to be a man and how I should act and behave. And because I didn't really fit into that, I think that's where a lot of it started. Is I felt like I was a bit of an outcast. I felt like people said that I wasn't like them and I didn't act like them, and I was called a coconut a lot because of the fact that I didn't act how they expected me to. And I don't know, I found that expectations quite stifling. And I think within the community, there's also a lot of homophobia. I often had, my parents make divisive comments towards people in the LGBTQ plus community. They would just say really stupid stuff, actually. Like my dad was once saw women's football on TV and he was like, look at all of these lesbians. And I was like, where's that come from? It's just so unnecessary. What was it like for you in India? What was it like coming out to your friends? You came out quite recently. Was it a good experience? Did it all go well?
So I wouldn't say it went well. So for one of my friend, I came out to her and I said that, I just want to let you know that I'm bisexual. And she said, every woman is bisexual in one way or another. They have this tendency to like girls and also men. I'm like, that's not how it works. Like, you have no idea about this. And then I went ahead and kind of tried to educate her about this. I don't know if she got it in her mind, but whatever. But now we are not in touch. Like, I don't want to be in that kind of space where I'm made to feel like that. Other than that, when I was growing up, I used to see tomboys, like girls who had short hair and all. And I used to see them and think that, why does she have so short hair? Like, and every auntie, like Indian aunties in the crowd, will be like, well, she's not going to get a guy to get married. And why is she like that? Why is she riding a bike? Why is she being so masculine and all? And I have seen this woman grow her hair and then get married to a cishet guy. And I was like, I didn't talk to her, but it seemed like she listened to the women around her, the Indian aunties around her, and she kind of gave in. She kind of gave in to the idea that, yes, I am supposed to be like that. And me, I don't know, the change happened kind of very slowly. Like, I didn't like how my hair looked. I always kept it short. And I went shorter even in 2017. Then I didn't like how the way, like I'm like more than average tall women. Like I'm 5'8", which is more than average in India at least. So I used to be told that I'm too tall, I won't get a guy. These kind of comments all the time. Still, I get these comments. And now I have become more comfortable in who I am and who I want to be. Like, I look up to people who are out and proud and kind of try to learn more. And I'm going to say this, Vaneet, I don't know everything about the community. I don't know everything. I'm still learning. I will say wrong things at the wrong time, but if someone comes and corrects me, I will definitely get it wrong. Yeah.
I think there's so much to say there. Like, I feel like it's so common for people to say when you do say you're bi, it's like, well, everyone's a little bit bi. And I'm like, that's not true. Like, I think a lot of people, there's a lot more people that are bi than we care to say, because a lot of people just ignore it, right? They'll, like, someone saying, oh, a lot of girls, like, no, but if those girls have that, then they are bi too. And that doesn't mean everyone's bi. It just means that there's more people that are bi than they admit it, because they know that if they do say, well, I'm bisexual, they will get discriminated against. And if they go, oh, well, I can just have a relationship like this. And I think that's what I experienced when I came out, is when I said that I'm bisexual, my parents saw it as like, oh, so there's still hope. There's still hope. And it was it was that kind of thing where, you know, my mom was like, well, then you could just marry a girl and, you know, then it'll be all be okay. And I'm like, but I'm still bisexual. And also that's not how love works. I can't just
Yeah.
go, okay, well, I'm going to go pick a girl and I will only focus on girls and that's it. Also very gender binary and all of that as well, where it's like girls and guys, which is so disappointing and frustrating, especially when you consider our history, which I'll get into in a bit, but like the history of India and the history of Hinduism and the history of like accepting fair gender. So it's really, really sad that we have all of these ideas of like a man and a woman. But yeah, I mean, there's so much interesting things to say there in terms of the ideas that people have about bisexuality.
Also, some people have this misconception that bisexual means only being attracted to two genders, which is not true. That is like two or more gender. And it kind of, it's not black and white, like bi and pan are kind of on the intersection. And some people won't understand it. And the thing that you were saying about just focusing on girls, that also like the some part of the queer community is kind of uh, what can I say, judgmental about that. Like you're cheating, like choose a side and all. Either be gay or either be a lesbian. Like this doesn't work that way. I can't focus on it, and you are cheating. I don't understand. I'm not cheating. Why is it cheating? I'm just being with a partner at one time. And I'm being monogamous. How is that cheating?
Yeah, I think a lot of, I think bi women tend to get a lot more hate in this regard as well, because they'll say, oh, bi women love to talk about how bi they are whilst they're there with their straight like boyfriend. And I'm like, statistically, bi women are more likely to get with a man because statistically there are more straight people. At what point don't people are people not going to understand this? But they'll see it as like us being trendy and us not picking a side. Yeah, I think there's so much to say there. I think the other thing that I really wanted to bring up was the judgment that you were saying, where people will constantly in the South Asian community, I feel like that they don't understand like boundaries.
Yeah.
They will comment
Definitely.
on everything and anything. Like then, like even outside of sexuality, the number of people when you would see your aunties and they'll be like, "Oh, you're getting so fat," and it's like where'd you find it okay to talk about my weight? And it's one of those things where I think our community doesn't understand boundaries. They love to pile on the pressure. So, when you're talking about that girl who grew out her hair and then got a boyfriend, because they just get that unrelenting pressure to conform to the ideals, to what the expectations are. And it becomes so damaging that you either have to leave it all behind, you have to cut all of these bonds in order to escape that, or you give in. And it's a really harmful, toxic situation to be in. I mean, for me, I ended up cutting a lot of bonds because I got so exhausted with people saying, this is what it means to be an Indian man living in the UK. And I was just like, I don't want to be that though. I want to be this and this and this at the same time. And they go, oh, coconut. Oh, like you must be gay. And I'm like, okay, now I'm bisexual. And it's like, oh, well, you can't, like, bisexual isn't real is the other thing that comes up. And it just becomes really exhausting where they constantly pile on pressure on you.
Also, I think as a bisexual man, I want to ask you this: Do you face racism in the UK as a bisexual man? Like I have seen some guy who had posted about his grinder screenshots, and there was this man who was saying that I don't for Indian guy, I don't go for Indian guy, like this. So have you faced that?
Yeah, it's a thing that happens a lot within the community. The LGBTQ plus community in the UK has a massive issue with racism. You get a lot of queer men who will say that, yeah, I mean, like on the apps, you have some people who just put it directly in their bios. They'll just be like, no blacks, no Asians, like just like immediately say, I was like, oh, I only like white men. Sometimes I'll just like, sorry, just say it to you, be like, oh, like unattractive, or like just out of the blue message you and say something like that. But then on the other hand, the other thing that you get is sometimes people will fetishize you. They'll be like, oh, I've never had a brown man before. And it's like, okay. And so just a checkbox exercise for you. And, you know, black people get it a lot as well, where they'll say, you know, have you got a big black dick, for example, is a thing that black queer men get a lot. It's awful. It's awful. It's a lot of where like for me, for example, I deleted the apps for a really long time. I found it hard to navigate certain spaces because people will give you looks. They'll wonder why you're in this space. They'll make comments about you. I think it's a really big issue within the community.
Since you mentioned fetishizing, like I would like to say that when I was on dating apps, I found it very difficult to navigate as a bisexual woman, because every time I told the person that I was bisexual, because I wanted to be like out and proud, and I wanted to let them know that, hey, this is the thing, and like I want to let you know this. So if they like, sometimes they will ask questions like, have you slept with a woman? Like, why is that a thing that I would talk to you about? Like, that is my personal space. That is, I draw the line there. And sometimes they will also ask for a threesome. Like, would you be interested in a threesome? And there are certain profiles that would show some couples together, and they will be like, we want a bisexual woman or a pansexual woman to join us for this, and we won't bite you. Please come to us for coffee or something like that. And I don't think that's good. Like, how is it? I feel so bad at that point, and I delete the app at that moment. I'm like, this is it. I am not going to do this anymore. And then I go back to the apps later on.
I mean, this is the thing, is that it's so hard to find queer people that you delete these apps and you go, well, now how am I supposed to find queer people to go out and date? And I can imagine that it's even harder in India because of the fact that, you know, only recently have the laws changed. There's, you know, previously it was illegal. So how else are you supposed to find people like safely without these kind of apps or stuff? There wasn't spaces, or there may have been, but they may have been harder to access. Like I also think that this points out the really interesting difference between, for example, bisexual women and bisexual men. You know, when we talk about bisexual people in general, I think bisexual non-binary people are just completely erased, because as people say, they think bisexual is just men and women, and therefore bisexual non-binary people are just erased entirely. When it comes to bisexual men, we tend to be erased as we're gay, and bisexual women tend to be erased as being straight. And bisexual men are normally seen as anything but an object of desire, because we're seen as people who haven't made up our minds yet, and women don't want to date us because they go, well, you're actually just gay, you'll get there, you'll figure it out. And bisexual and gay men will say, well, you're in the closet, so actually we'll date you when you figured it out. Well, bisexual women are seen as an object of desire in a really harmful, disgusting, fetishistic way, because you're seen as this object that can fulfill this male fantasy of like having sex with two women at once. And it's just really awkward position to be put into, to go, oh, can you fulfill this this idea for me? Can you fulfill this sexual fantasy for me? And often what leads to a lot of harm that bisexual women get. Bisexual women are more likely to have sexual violence, like are more likely to experience sexual violence than straight women or lesbians. And it's because of that fact that they're seen as this object. When they don't fulfill this, they're often harmed as a result. So yeah, like it's just a really difficult situation. The thing that I wanted to bring up was the thing that I was going to mention earlier is the impact of colonization. So for me in the diaspora, I think what has happened is all of the history of colonization in India has completely erased the history of queerness within India. And I think the diaspora, they've come over with all of the colonization being put upon them, and they've come over to the UK or the US or other countries with those ideals that have been formed within the rule, the British rule in India, and the idea that it's, you know, savage behavior and it's disgusting and it's wrong to indulge in queerness. And they brought that over with them, and they hold on to those ideals because if they lose them, they feel like they're losing this connection with the culture. But actually that culture isn't our culture. That culture is something that has been created by the British. And if they only knew our history, they would realize that they're actually holding on to whiteness, essentially. What is it like in India at the moment with colonization? What is the country doing in terms of unlearning all of the harm that the British have done? It's probably a big question that you can't answer, but like, what have you experienced in that?
I don't think India is doing anything to unlearn that, but like, you know, that 377 was first legalized and then again criminalized and then again legalized. Like that was a big win for us. I think it happened in 2018 or 2019. So I don't have the answer to your question, Vaneet, but I think there are safe spaces in India where we can go. I have not been able to like make queer friends so much. I have like maybe 4 or 5 friends in queer space, but I don't know the answer to your question. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a big question.
Vaneet and Snehanjana, if you don't mind me just sort of chiming in quickly, and particularly because I've been hearing such diverse conversations that you've been having. But Vaneet, thank you so much for bringing this to the question of colonization, because at least in the context of India, I think the question becomes a little more complex. And I think Snehanjana and you might want to think about it on those lines, which is that not only do we have a history of colonization that is transnational, which is where and transracial, but also colonization that is segued through caste, right? So and if you are an Indian, I think caste is one of the markers, one of your identities that you're essentially never able to shed. I mean, in that way, it is often similar to race, although I don't want to make a lousy comparison between race and caste. So I was wondering if both of you would also like to touch a little bit upon this question from your experiences or from experiences that you've observed. And I'm saying this only because the history itself has a very interesting caste angle to it. So what Vaneet's been saying, for example, is the history of queerness in India, which is at least in the 2014 Nalsa judgment, which is the first judgment in the country that sort of gave transgender persons the right to self-determine their gender and ask for civil and substantive rights. It referred to this fantastic book by Ruth Vanita and Salim Kidwai called Same-Sex Love in India, which traced this history of queerness and transness, gender nonconformity in India. And we've evidenced that a lot of this has already been in ancient culture, but often spoken through the language of caste. So for example, a book like Kama Sutra, which has all kinds of sex and sex acts happening in it, is also a book that is fairly Brahminical in its orientation.
Yeah.
So if one can think about complicating this narrative through an added layer of intersectionality. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anton, for adding that. Like, there's obviously a caste angle to it because there are oppressed individuals and minorities that don't get that kind of exposure. Other than being queer and trans, they are like from minorities, and it kind of gives them the, what can I say? They're not helped in these spaces. So yeah, we need to help these people. I'm sorry, I'm not the person, I'm not the best person to talk about this because I myself have not faced this. So I am not the best person to talk about this. So I can't really comment on this.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same. Like, I unfortunately can't massively comment on it. My experience of caste is my parents refused to tell us. Like, my parents never told me what caste I was when I was younger. And it was only like from hearing it from someone at school about caste and stuff that I asked my parents, and they were like, why do you want to know? No, you shouldn't know. You shouldn't think about that. And eventually told me, and yeah, and then I didn't think of anything of it again. The interesting experience that my sister had was when she went to India, and people would ask her name and then ask her full name because you can figure out your caste from your surname.
Yeah.
And the reaction to her when she told her surname was very telling because of the fact that our surname is marked to a certain caste. But when they found out that she was Punjabi, suddenly that changes things because our surname has a very different caste depending on whether we're Gujarati or Punjabi. And suddenly the enthusiasm changed. I haven't had a lot of experiences with it. I consider that means that people aren't making judgments on me when they see my surname and what that means for them. And so a lot of it could be happening without me ever actually knowing about it. But yeah, I think I agree with, that's something that we all need to be working on. We need to be making sure that, we do stuff and make sure that we try and fix the whole idea around caste. I think a lot of it, like the fact that it's tied to our surnames, means that it's very hard to shed. I know I had a discussion once with someone who was saying, oh, I don't use my surname as a result. And I find that it's difficult because, being part of the diaspora, I think my surname is kind of a link for me to my culture and my religion and all of that, but it also has the damaging part of being part of the caste. I had a conversation with someone else as well who was saying that they have a relative and he's also South Asian and also Black. And he said that on his South Asian side of the family, he has someone who is gay, and a lot of the family just kind of turn the blind eye because of the fact that he's also rich and successful. And so it's one of those things where it feels like you can be queer in certain circles if you are of a certain caste, or if you are certain social status. It's not as frowned upon because, well, you've got all of that. Whilst it's probably harder for people who are of other social status. So I think, yeah, that's what I really have to say on it. It's not something I've experienced myself. So
Thanks. Thank you so much for accommodating this. Please carry on. I just thought that was a good moment to bring this in, and I hope I didn't distract you from the conversation.
No, no, not at all. I think the other thing that I wanted to mention is, so I've written about this in my book, but it's the whole savages narrative that I've been finding really hard to contend being in the UK, because, you know, I think a lot of people in the UK, a lot of people in sort of Western countries, they see a lot of the countries that haven't necessarily decriminalized same-sex acts or you know, legalized queer marriages and all of this sort of stuff. They see them as like regressive, and it feels like that savages narrative has been flipped. So where the British came to places like India, saw them, you know, doing things that they see taboo, such as queer sex, such as, you know, sex outside of marriage, and all of the stuff that necessarily didn't fit in with the sort of Christian Western ideals at the time. And then they outlawed them. They put down Section 377 in a lot of countries. They outlawed a lot of like queer relationships and queer sexual acts. And they painted this idea of all of this stuff as being, you know, outside of God's light and savages and all of that sort of narrative constructed around that. And now it feels like the narrative has been flipped, where Western countries have moved past that, moved past the idea of this being wrong or outlawing all of this stuff. And now they see all these other countries as countries that haven't moved past that, and now they're running that narrative again, right? They're saying they're savages, they're aggressive, they're behind the times. And it's really frustrating, because actually, if you go back before they ruined everything, we didn't outlaw this stuff. We didn't see this stuff as wrong, or, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that we were perfect before British colonization, but there was a lot of differences, and there's a lot of history there that we're now having to unpick, and we're having to find our culture and unpick all of the colonization that affected it and changed it.
Yeah, India is still undoing like what we were taught by the Britishers, because like we followed their steps, like everything that we followed, and still it is very difficult for queer people to come out and talk about this, right? I didn't know about this, like when you mentioned, like I didn't know that other countries are viewed as regressive. Like I got to know from you. So yeah, and I think gay marriages being legal in India is kind of far for now. Like it is decriminalized, and that is what we are celebrating still. But it will happen in due time, obviously. But we have to wait for a long time.
I think one of the most interesting run-ins that I had with someone was there was a news report in a UK publication. To be honest, don't know why a UK publication even finds this necessary to report on, but a UK LGBTQ plus publication had taken some research from India and reported on it about how I can't remember what the exact percentage was, but a certain percentage of people in India said they wouldn't want to accept an organ from a queer person. Wow. This prompted a lot of people in the West to say very flippantly, well, die then. And I was like, I understand that we don't care. Like if bigots choose to not take an organ from a queer person and then they die as a result, then okay, like you've made the wrong decision because of your bigotry. Yeah. But there was something very uncomfortable for me as a person in the diaspora to see a lot of markedly white people from the UK comment on bigotry within India and basically wishing death upon Indian people who are bigots. And I was like, I get it, but I feel like it's not your place, because it is you that is responsible for the situation there. And that is not me trying to excuse bigotry in India as like, oh, we should go light on them. But I also don't want to see this from white people. Like, it makes me feel really uncomfortable for white people to just like to say shit like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, it's a very complicated situation. And I was just like, I don't want to see that from you. Of all people, I don't want to see that from you. And so, yeah, I think that's what I mean when a lot of people go, they're backwards or behind the times. Like, why would you even think that? And I'm like, actually, I mean, if you did that poll in the UK, you'd probably be surprised by the results. Like, you would probably be surprised because I don't think it would be as low as you would expect. So, yeah, but that was just one of the really interesting things for me of like a lot of LGBTQ plus people in the UK not realizing, I guess, their place or their lane and staying in it.
Yeah.
Moving on from all of that, I wanted to ask, I know you've only come out recently, but what has your experience been of LGBTQ plus spaces in India? What has that been like?
Like I said, most of the time they are kind of welcoming, but whenever I mention that I'm bisexual, firstly they raise their eyebrows like, oh, like this is completely cis het perspective. Like, oh, nice. So have you slept with a woman? Blah blah blah. And for queer spaces, uh, I have I have a pansexual friend who is kind of welcoming. I have gone out with her several times, and she is the closest queer friend I have. So I can like talk to her about anything and everything. And it is very difficult for me to meet people. First of all, I'm introverted. I don't leave my house. Don't like to leave my house. Secondly, on dating apps, whenever I try to talk to people, they are kind of like, maybe they are not replying. That's what, like, you're ghosted most of the time. And if you kind of create like an environment where both of you are comfortable in talking to each other, uh, and you meet, maybe sometimes it will create a connection. But then again, like, I know they are there, and if I talk to them they will be there, but it's not very close. So I think it will change when I move to the US, hopefully. I think it will be more welcoming, because from by far what I have seen, my lab is very welcoming in that space. And I don't think I'll have a problem in my lab. But yeah, we'll have to see about the Texan population mostly.
Yeah, I guess Texas is a bit of a difficult one considering everything that's happening there at the moment with the like "Don't Say Gay"
Yeah.
bill and
Yeah,
all of that. What is the makeup of the spaces that you end up going to? Because like for me, in the UK, a lot of the spaces that I go to are, I mean, I'm sure you probably won't have this problem, but very white dominated, first of all. But they're also very male dominated. And I find obviously that doesn't make me as uncomfortable, but I can imagine that it might be more difficult for women to be in those kind of spaces. In fact, I've seen it. I've seen women come to these spaces and not always feel like they are very welcomed or feel very comfortable in the space because it's mostly finding other men. I also find that they're very gay or gay and lesbian dominated, and therefore it's often very hard to find other bisexual, pansexual people. And sometimes you actually experience biphobia and bierasia even within LGBTQ plus spaces. I don't know what it's like over there. Have you experienced any of that kind of stuff or?
So in Calcutta, there are not many spaces where you can go out and talk to some people. Um, uh, I think there are spaces online that like allow people to talk to each other. But again, like I have never been to those spaces, so um, I don't really know. But I think there are fairly good amount of spaces in other cities like Mumbai or Bangalore or Delhi. But in Calcutta, it is very less. So most of the time, if you want to have, if you want to network with other kinds of people, you have to, uh, like, we met on Twitter, right? We talked on Twitter. You have to go and pin them on Instagram. So there are people. Also, I wanted to share something. So about the dating space. So whenever I have dated a cishet man, I thought who was cishet. They come up to me and they say that they have had experiences where they uh, slept with a gay man and they liked it. So I asked them, like, are you like coming out to me as bisexual? They're like, no, that was one time. I just wanted to try it for once. It was a phase. It was a phase. So they're like, okay, but the thing is, maybe they are bisexual, but they won't come out as bisexual because it hurts their ego or manliness to come out as bisexual. Like they think that they will be judged more, as you were saying, they will be judged more, and they will be tagged as effeminate or I don't know. Like I think that, but they kind of feel more comfortable sharing this with bisexual women. Like when you put yourself out there as a bisexual or pansexual woman, they come up to you and they say, yes, I have had this kind of thing with another person, and I think, yeah, uh, maybe it was a one-time thing, but I felt comfortable sharing this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really common thing amongst bi men. So, I mean, even in the UK, I think it's been shown by Stonewall that 48%, I think it was 48% of bi men are out to no one in their family, and only I think it was like 12% are out to everyone in their family, which is like a stark contrast from gay and lesbian people, because it's like, I think it's seen that like 60% of gay men are out to everyone in their family. So it's like complete flip. And so often it's exactly what you said. It's that idea of they lose their manliness. There's actually a really interesting concept that I read about called phallocentrism, which is this idea that when you are penetrated by a penis, your state is altered, you are changed as a human. And so much of that is built into misogyny. So for example, the whole idea of women being a virgin and that being important, because when you have sex with someone, when you are penetrated, that changes you. But it also ends up being queerphobic in ways, because it means that for women who have sex with other women, that doesn't change anything. And it's why it's seen as like a woman can do that and it's just fun and it's just a little bit of a thing that happened.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter because of the fact that they aren't penetrated and therefore they aren't changed, they aren't altered. A lot of that is very cis normative as well, because it's assuming that a woman has a vagina, it assumes that a man has a penis, etc. And it also erases non-binary people, as it always does. So that whole concept, it's that idea of a man, when they are penetrated, it kind of rips them of their masculinity. It's why a lot of women say they won't date bisexual men, because of the fact that they see them as less manly. And I think that's why a lot of bi men or men who have had sex with men at some point in their lives are afraid to admit it, because they see that and they are maybe not actually aware, but subconsciously aware that if they were to admit that, it would strip them of some level of masculinity. And as a result of that, they are seen as less attractive to women. And women aren't necessarily going around saying, I want the manliest man, but they subconsciously, on some subconscious level, they may hear that and go, oh, so are they? They may not be the kind of guy for me. Oh, and it's also biphobia within that. Like, what if they cheat on me? What if they haven't actually figured it out? Blah blah blah. And men are aware of that. They're like, well, I don't want to put the doubt on it, so I'm just gonna keep that to myself. And I think that that's the reason why they become more comfortable to say it to someone like you, who is a bi woman or pansexual woman, because they go, well, oh, suddenly I can say it to them and maybe they won't run away scared. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I've had bisexual men tell me that they've had bisexual women tell them that they're actually gay. And
Wow.
it's that internalized biphobia.
Maybe it's the fact that like they think like they will listen to us, like a bi man thinks that bi woman would listen more to us because they understand what we are going through, right?
Yeah,
So
there's like a shared experience there.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, so for me in the LGBTQ plus community in the UK, I mean, we've already gone over the racism, but there's also the biphobia. Like, there's also, I've had times where, you know, I would speak to another bisexual person. Like I was having a conversation with a bisexual man who was saying that sometimes he feels like a bad bi because, you know, he's mostly slept with men. And I was like, you know, I haven't had sex with a woman. I've only had sex with men, and I've only kissed a woman, and that's it. And someone was like, well, how do you know? How do you know then? Some gay man just chimed into the conversation and was like, well, how do you know?
Yeah.
And it's such a common thing for, I feel like the community is so male dominated, so white dominated, so gay dominated. And a lot of these people are in that little bubble and they never are aware of the other people around them. And they never bother to actually learn about the rest of the community, help support the rest of the community. They end up playing into those same things of just, you know, I've spoken to so many bisexual men who will say, yeah, I've had gay men tell me that I'll figure it out, that they were once bi too, and all of that sort of stuff of it's a phase, you will get over it, you'll work through it, you'll understand. A lot of gay men actually come out as bi first, even when they know that they're not bi, because they think it's easier. They think, oh, well, I can always, that makes it easier, I can toe the line. And, you know, if something goes wrong, I can just go back in the closet and it's fine. I can just say that it was a phase. And it ends up playing into that idea. It ends up like pushing that narrative that bisexual isn't real, that it's just a moment in time that people have. And for some people it is. Sexuality is fluid. Some people go through that, works up, like learn something. But a lot of people don't like the fact that actually sometimes it can go the other way. They just see bisexual as a stepping stone and it can never be a permanent state. And actually I've had people who were gay, who identified as gay, who then eventually came out as bisexual because they always had attraction for multiple genders, but because they didn't see the fact that there could be a sexuality that isn't straight and gay, they came out as gay, they identified as gay, and then eventually were like, no, actually I am bisexual and I'm going to identify as bisexual, and they're now bisexual. And people don't seem to understand that is also a narrative that exists. That is also something that happens to people. That fluidity isn't just a one-way thing. It's an all states thing, and you can move between a whole bunch of things. I know people who've gone from like lesbian to bi to asexual to like trans and like trans lesbian. Like people have changed in so many different ways, and I think it's accepting the fact that life is about learning yourself. But a lot of people just love to see it's just bisexual as a phase and nothing else. Like once you're gay, you're gay, and that's it. And yeah,
like the LGBT B is for bisexual. Like we are here to stay. They don't understand that. Also,
no.
I would like to say that there are two other terms, that bi-curious and bi-romantic. So bi-curious is basically like being curious about that state, right? So like it's not completely into like sexuality. So there are people who were bi-curious and they came up to me and they were like, oh, I just want to try it out. Like do you think I am a piece of meat that you want to try it out? It's not really good. And bi romantic is basically being romantic towards your partner and not uh, like no, sorry, biromantic is basically being romantic towards two or more genders, right? And like it doesn't involve anything uh, regarding sex, if I'm correct if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no,
And
you're correct.
yeah, also whenever I'm dating a man, I feel guilty that I am not dating a woman or any other gender, because like it's internalized now, because so many people have come up to me and asked, have you had sex with a woman? And I'm like, no, but okay, maybe I will in the future, who knows. But since I'm just dating men right now, it's not like I won't be, I don't get women to date, because first of all there are very less queer people coming out of the closet, and whenever they come out of the closet, maybe they don't want to mate, they want to keep to themselves. And queer people go through a mental distress all the time, right? So I have like general anxiety disorder and depression. So it is tough for me, and there will be people who are very intrusive, like not very like they don't respect your boundaries, like you were saying, and they will come up to you and ask these silly questions. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I had something I wanted to say on the back of that, but I can't remember now, which is frustrating. um, but yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, everything you said, like about the boundaries and all of that. And I think people love to ask that question that you said, like they love to go, have you had sex with this? Have you had sex with that? And you have to remind people that like, it's not about who I've had sex with, it's about who I am attracted to. It's not a purely sexual thing, it's about who I'm romantically interested in as well. And people love to gloss over that stuff. Like, you know, I mean, a lot of people hate the word bi-curious. For me, I think I found it helpful because that was the first term I ever heard. And it helped kind of give me a little bit of a light bulb, even though I'm constantly turning the light bulb off. Like it gave me a little bit of a light bulb moment of like, you know, that is something that exists.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it should be, you know, there's not like gay curious, but there is like homo flexible and stuff like that as well. And I think it's having that area of people sometimes exist within this gray, and they are questioning and trying to understand themselves. And sometimes people like to put a deeper meaning into, well, what are you questioning? It's like, oh, well, I think I might be bi, but I'm not sure. So I'm bi curious. I think that's what I am. And I think it can be helpful for some people, but I also understand the ways it can be damaging. Biromantic is great because I think, you know, there are some people like asexual people, for example, who aren't interested in sex, or, you know, don't have sexual attraction or don't experience sexual attraction in the same way that people, allosexual people do. And so they may go, well, I'm asexual, but I am biromantic and I do want a romantic relationship. And I don't mind the identity, or, you know, I'm interested in multiple genders. I'm just not interested in pursuing a sort of sexual based relationship, but I am interested in pursuing the romantic based one.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting how, you know, people, a lot of people, you know, have, there's just so much out there. You know, a lot of people love to say there's gay and there's straight and that's it. And I think there's just so much variety out there. And I think it's nice that when people try and accept all the variety that exists out there.
Yeah.
I just want to intervene for one brief second, Vaneet and Snehanjana. I think we have about half an hour before the event finishes. So I was wondering if you'd like to take the next 5 to 10 minutes to talk about your experiences of being bi in STEM, because I think both of you are coming from science, technology, engineering, medicine, mathematics plus backgrounds. And as somebody who's queer in that background, I'm also very curious to understand how that experience has been. And then we can open it up for discussion if that's all right, with both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to go first, Snehanjana, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay. So for me, like I said, I work as a software engineer, so I work in tech. And I think for me, it's been interesting. I think it's strange because technology has been something that has really been created by women. I think it would be ridiculous to not say that. You have people like Ada Lovelace, and whose name escapes me, but there is someone who worked on the Apollo mission, who was really pushing forward a lot of technological advancements and was the first person who coined the word software engineer. So it's very annoying that I can't remember their name. But I think women have been at the forefront of technology. And now, unfortunately, it seems to have gone completely the other way where it's become a complete bros club. Yes, I think that is the name, Margaret Hamilton. I think that is the name. I will search it up in a brief moment there. But yeah, I think it's frustrating that it has become a complete bros club. And I think with that, it's created a very toxic culture of banter and, dude bro kind of attitude. And that lends itself very easily to misogyny. And, I always say that queerphobia is born out of misogyny. And so it lends itself really well to a attitude around bigotry. And I think a lot of people just don't understand a lot of this stuff, or they do, but they don't really care that what they're saying hurts people, harms people. I think tech has a long way to go in terms of making their workforce diverse, let alone inclusive. A previous workplace I worked at didn't do, they would try and do stuff in terms of making the workplace inclusive for women, but most of the women in our company did not work on the technology stuff. They would be people managers or marketing or HR, but they won't be working as software developers or quality engineers or anything like that. And so I think that is something that needs to be worked on. The current company I'm working at has, again, similar issues, but the one thing that they do is they do have a lot of networks. So they do have, which my previous company didn't have. So they do have LGBTQ plus networks. They are having the conversations. They are making sure that their healthcare includes trans healthcare. They are putting pronouns in bios. They are, getting LGBT, doing stuff for Pride Month. And I think that is a really, really good foundation to make a workforce diverse. They do have onboard training around diversity and inclusion and discrimination and their policies, and they do have sort of zero tolerance, or they do try and enforce these policies of making sure that people aren't discriminated against in the workplace. And I think that's really important because I think a lot of these, otherwise these workplaces can become very toxic for a lot of people. So that has been my experience.
Yeah, so I didn't come out to most of my classmates or professors because I thought I would be judged according to that. But so I volunteer for this group called Women in STEM Research India. And there, to my teammates, I came out like last year, maybe before Pride Month. And they were quite accommodating. There was another person who came out at the same time. She was sexual, and and they have been truly helpful. Like it's not like I face discrimination, to be honest, at any point in my life. Um, so I can't really say that oh yeah, like they haven't been intrusive or anything. But I still fear coming out to my professors or teachers with whom I have worked previously, like during my bachelor's in education or during my master's, because obviously they don't understand that. Like if I tell them that, hey, my pronouns are she and her, they'll be like, we don't care. We don't care because we don't know what you're talking about. And I don't think they put that effort in learning about LGBTQ community also. And yeah, so since they don't know about the community, there is no uh, like idea of discrimination as that. But yeah, whenever I have come out to friends and communities, uh, they have been kind of inclusive and they have been accommodating. So I haven't faced that discrimination. I can say that.
I think the other issue that I wanted to bring up was in terms of like the intersection of sort of STEM and bisexuality. Um, there's been a big issue in terms of how uh, sciences and psychology and stuff have to pathologize bisexuality. There was a study that shouldn't have been done, but was done, where they tried to prove the existence of bisexual men. And they basically put bisexual men in a room and basically showed them different types of porn
What?
and measured their arousal and used that to determine whether bisexuality was a thing or not. Not considering the fact that like that's not as simple as it is, but apparently they were like, well, we just measure whether they get an erection, and this is a problem within STEM, is that they try to pathologize it. You know, there's when we talk about like mental health, for example, people, mental health professionals sometimes say that the reason why you have mental health issues is because of the fact that you're bisexual, and bisexuality is part of it. So bisexuality is a mental health issue. And the thing is, it is not bisexuality that causes the mental health issues. It's the biphobia and biasia that you experience as being bisexual that can cause mental health issues. But that's not what they're saying. They're trying to say it's because you're bisexual.
Yeah.
And that is a sign of mental health problems. And this has been a very long running thing. And I think it's really interesting to see that like it kind of highlights the fact that the lack of diversity and inclusion within these kind of spaces, because if they had the diversity and inclusion, then this stuff wouldn't be happening. We would be treated on a more human level than we are currently being treated. I mean, it happens in general. A lot of these industries are white dominated and male dominated and cis straight dominated, and it causes these problems. You know, like, just as a footnote, outside of sexuality, racism within tech is a massive issue. You would see like countless examples of, for example, people trying to make camera sensors, and the camera sensors don't identify brown and black people as humans.
Yeah.
I once went to this event, and there was a camera thing where you could like dress yourself up, and it would not pick me up. It would pick up my friend about 4 feet behind me. I was standing on the exact spot it told me to, and it wouldn't pick me up. I couldn't dress myself up because it wouldn't recognize me as a human. So yeah, anyway, that's all I have to say on the topic.
Also, Vaneet, you and I were talking about Pride Month, the difference in Pride Month and Bi Visibility Month ones, that people come up to you during Bi Visibility Month and talk to you, but during Pride Month, bisexuals get all kinds of hate. Like I have seen, I opened Twitter during Pride Month, and every time I opened Twitter, there was one biphobic um, tweet about how bi women have heterosexual boyfriends and they are not bisexual because they have a man, they are not dating a woman. So yeah, what is your opinion about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just highlights the fact that the LGBTQ plus community doesn't do enough outside of the L and the G. It's the L and the G, and then everything else is just a bit of a mumble. Sometimes they do stuff around the T. The T are being like massively attacked in the media at the moment, and so I think it's really good that people are rallying around them. But I think there is still more that they could be doing even around the T. But people don't care about the B. They barely care about the T, but not enough. And they don't care about the like asexual people, aromantic people, intersex people. Not enough is done. Like, yeah, we were having this discussion. I get little to no work during Pride Month, but get a whole bunch during Bi Visibility Month and Bi Visibility Week and Day. I get the discourse that you were talking about happens every single year. There is the no streets at Pride, which is like, I get it, but if you try and police that, you're more likely to hurt bisexual people, asexual people, and trans people, because you may have trans people who are straight and bisexual people who are in straight relationships and asexual people who may be in a straight relationship. So yeah, I think a lot of that stuff just highlights that the LGBTQ plus community is LNG first, and that's it, really.
Yeah.
Thank you. Vaneet and Snehanjana, are you done for now? Can we move on to the discussion? So, all right. So I think this was a great conversation to hear, and it, reminds me of something that as Queer Disrupt, we've always tried to do, which is to sort of ground experiences in personal narratives and not shy away from questions that are tough. And I'm really glad that you brought in such diverse narratives about desire and sort of undesire, but also about how fractured identities are and how they get multiply fractured in different spaces, right? So be it as a bi person in the LGBTQ community or the bi person in STEM, there's a certain fracturing that's constantly happening. And I'm really, really glad we could at least get a sense of what are these different fractures. And I'm really thinking a lot through this about also what does this mean for community building itself as an exercise. Partly because we understand that community building happens through shared experiences of marginalization, but then there's an added layer of different experiences, right? So when we say LGBTQ, it is a certain thread that holds us together, but then there are several threads that don't. And yet one has to sort of be a community. And I'm still processing so much of what you said, but with that, I think we'll open it up for discussion. And if I'm not wrong, then we'll not be recording the Q&A discussion. So people can feel free to unmute themselves and sort of introduce themselves and say their questions or comments. And of course, it'll be great if you could raise your hand. So Zoom has a raise hand function in the reactions box. If I'm not wrong, you'll see it at the bottom bar. And if you sort of raise your hand, then I can take the responsibility of drawing you in. And you can make your comment or ask your question.